Welcome to Xara template tutorial lesson number 76. In this tutorial we're going to talk about another new feature in the Xara Web Designer MX Premium version 8 of the Xara software. And the new feature that we're going to talk about is the push attribute. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you want to do is go ahead and go to your toolbar and go to your quick shapes, and we're going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. So go ahead and draw two rectangles in your workspace, and after you draw those two rectangles, you're going to go ahead and select the not selection tool but the text tool. And once you select the text tool, we're going to write the word push, and you're not going to see that because it's in black text, so let's go ahead and change that to white text. And after you write the word push in one of these boxes, and I'm going to actually fix this so that we don't have a capital U-N-P, just be capital P there. Really doesn't matter, but I'm a visual learner, so things like that will bother me. After you write that text, go ahead and hit Control C and make a copy, and then hit Control V and paste another copy. And we're going to place that copy over top of this second rectangle, and we're going to give it the word footer. And you can make that a little bit smaller if you want to, so that it fits inside this rectangle. So I'm going to resize that to make it smaller. And then I'm going to group this first set of text and the rectangle together, so hit Control G to group that. And then I'm going to group this as well, hit Control G to group both of those objects together after you select over both of them. So both of these objects will be both together. It's the push text with the rectangle and the footer text with its own rectangle. So let's go ahead and right click on the push rectangle and go to position on page, and let's go ahead and set that to push. And when you get the push dialog that pops up, you're going to go ahead and check the box for push, and you'll notice that it automatically sets it to 5 pixels for top, 5 pixels for bottom, and 5 for extend size. And that's because the aspect ratio lock button here is set on. If you were to turn that off, you could put in individual values. So you could put 10 pixels for bottom and then have the other two values different, or you could change the other values to whatever you want to. But I want to go ahead and check that lock box again so that everything will be locked. And I'm going to change the top to 30 pixels, and that's going to keep the top and bottom even. So go ahead and hit apply, then hit close, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the footer box object here, and we're going to right click on that. And when you right click on that, give me 1 second, and go to position on page, and you're going to go ahead and set it to footer. So now we got both of these set to a different attribute. This is set to footer and this is set to push. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit on our page, and I'm actually going to select both of these objects so I can get them close to the bottom of my page. And then go ahead and move your push object close to the bottom of the page. And notice what happens. When you place it close to the edge of the bottom of the page, it forces the page to get bigger so that there's always a 30 pixel margin or gap between the bottom edge of the page and the bottom edge of this rectangle. So that's going to always hold true. And if you were to try to resize your page up, you'll notice that you can't make it smaller. And the reason that is because it's set to fixed. And what I mean by that, I'll show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and right click on this object, and then go to position on page. And when you go to position on page, you'll see that it's set to fixed and push. So when it's set to fixed and push for the option, it's not going to allow you to push the page back up, not with that fixed option checked. If you put it to footer though, now this push object is going to behave like both a push object and a footer object. In other words, if we resize this page up, it's going to move when you move the page, just like the footer will. And you'll notice that the footer up here is moving when you move the page. So it's going to behave again like the footer option and like the push option. If you try to move the footer down and move it over the page, you'll see that nothing happens because it's just a footer attribute applied to this object. But the push object, if you move it down, it has both the push attribute applied to it and the footer attribute. So it'll behave like the footer when you resize the page, and it'll behave like the push option or attribute when you move the rectangle down. So I wanted to show you that so I could distinguish between, a push attribute and a footer attribute. So hopefully you're following me so far. So let's go ahead and delete this footer. We don't need that anymore. And let's go ahead and select this push object and then hit Control C and Control V and make a copy. And we're going to place this push object above the other one. And I wanted to show you something else here. Now if you grab this top push object and try to move it down, look what happens. It forces the other push object to go down as well, and it resizes the page. So when you have two push objects with whatever margin you give it, it's going to create that distance between those two objects. For example, in this case, since both these objects have a 30 pixel top margin, and the space between these two push objects is a total of 60 pixels, and the space between the edge of this bottom of the page and this last push object is only 30 pixels. So you can in essence create two push objects that push each other plus push the size of the page. And if you've got it set to footer, they'll both move up and act like the footer attribute when you move it back up, because we applied the footer attribute to one of the objects, and when we copied it, it copied those attributes. So hopefully you're following me and you like what you see here, and this tutorial was helpful in showing you how to use some other features in the Xara Web Designer MX Premium version 8 of the software. There is one other thing I want to show you before I actually go. If you were to try to push this object close to this one, you'll see that it pushes off of it. And that's because it has side margins too. So if you get too close to another push object, it'll force it down. And as you can see, if I try to put it close to it, it forces it down. And it doesn't matter which one you put next to each other, it's going to force the other object down if you try to push it next to it. So if I try to push it to the left of it, it'll force it down. So I wanted to show you that too as well. So that's pretty much it. I think that's enough to give you insight into how the push attribute works. If you have any questions, please send me a message on YouTube. Don't forget to embed and subscribe to our video, and feel free to share it, give us thumbs up if it was helpful. If it wasn't, please let us know, and we'll try to make another tutorial to make it easier to understand, or we'll at least try to answer your question. So again, thanks for viewing this tutorial, and I hope that you stay tuned for future tutorials as well.